There is a fable about the king of a small country. The country was so small, in fact, it was an island. And one day the king decided that his country was too small for all his people. So he gathered together his knights and sent them across the water. When the knights landed on a far shore, they claimed the land for the king. Villages and towns were established in the new land, but the king soon found out that it could be expensive to expand a tiny country in a new place. The king needed more money before his country became bankrupt, but instead of taxing his own people, he decided to make the people of the new land support him. After all, the king mused, everyone should be appreciative of the mighty exploits of their great leader. The king instituted taxes, or what we might call tariffs, on things that he thought were unnecessary, so that people would not get too upset. But they did get upset because he raised the cost of sugar, tea, coffee, and wine. Very important items. The people, in fact, were so furious, they refused shipments of those goods and sometimes threw them back into the sea. The king did not get enough money to pay his bills, so he decreed that there should be another tax in the new land. But he tried to keep it hidden by requiring the purchase of special stamps on official documents, newspapers, and pamphlets. This made the people of the new land even angrier, and they started to resist the king's right to impose such hardships. The king responded by sending out yet another decree that stated he was in charge of all things official in the new land, that he would send his knights, what we might call federal agents, to keep order, and that the people of the new land would pay all the expenses of his knights. And the people did not live happily ever after. Does anyone know the name of this fable? It's called the American Revolution. This country was founded on the resistance to total control by a single authoritarian figure. Had the King of England not treated the people of British America with such heavy-handed cruelty and injustice, it is very likely that this country would have remained a part of the United Kingdom for a very long time. Even during the height of the American Revolution, there were those Americans who desired to remain under control of the king because it was familiar, it was historic, and it gave them a sense of belonging. There are always those who want to be told what they should do, who do not want to think about the bigger picture beyond themselves, and who are content to know their place, even if that place is in meaningless service to an uncaring despot. The American Revolution began not with this large military action, but through small acts of resistance here and there throughout the country. Some refused to pay unfair taxes. Other people engaged in small acts of sabotage and subversion against the English troops, while still others wrote dissenting articles and pamphlets. The English simply didn't know how to deal with this less than regal behavior. These were acts of resistance carried out not by military officers, high court judges, or hard-chiseled action heroes. They were acts of ordinary bravery performed by ordinary people, and they inspired others to do the same. Civilian acts of nonviolent resistance have resulted in many triumphs in the fight for freedom and justice throughout the world. In 1947, Gandhi's call for acts of nonviolent resistance led to the independence of India from British domination. The harsh Marcos dictatorship in the Philippines was brought down by peaceful protesters in 1986. The Polish call for peaceful solidarity against authoritarian rule succeeded in 1989, and in the very next year, South African apartheid policies were abolished. Other remarkable moments of nonviolent resistance resulted in the end of tyrannical rule in Serbia, Ukraine, and many Arab countries in what became known as the Arab Spring. In our own country, nonviolent activism has resulted in gains for the rights of women to vote, advances for equal justice in the civil rights movement, and freedoms for the gay and lesbian communities, of course, until recent times. The point here is that small acts of nonviolent defiance can have an effect on tyrannical control, though they also carry risks. That is why people who act together in groups tend to be more effective, and why I bring this issue to your attention. I believe we are heading, if we are not already there, into a time of authoritarian rule that will result in the suffering of many people. Like all prospective dictatorships, the true aims of the leaders are never fully revealed until it is too late to stop them. This is no time to cover our faces and pretend that nothing is happening, even if it feels like nothing is happening to you right now. Those who do not feel the pain of suffering from brutal oppression will one day suffer under the tremendous weight of guilt and shame for having been complacent in its brutal proliferation. Granted, I am speaking to you now about the recent rise of one particular wing of one particular party in this country, but this is not, mind you, a sermon on politics. It is a sermon directed against the abuses of basic human rights currently being perpetrated in this country by a government that shows every sign of heading toward tyranny. The very thing this country fought so hard against and has resisted throughout the world for more than 2 centuries. The people currently in power use tools of totalitarianism that include a heightening of fear, scapegoating, the exploitation of workers, the employment of rigged or hampered elections, a biased judicial system, and a monopolized media. But the worst of all is the abuse, oppression, and terror that have resulted from their policies. All of these things are happening now. It is not a political statement to say that all human beings deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. It is not a political statement to say that all people should be allowed to live in a world where each is free to embrace life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness without restriction or obstruction. It is not a political statement to say that all people deserve fair and equal treatment under the law, period. These are not political statements. They are statements of reason. They are statements of decency. They are statements of faith. If we are going to truly call ourselves universalists, then we must embrace the worthiness, integrity, and righteousness of every person in this country, whether or not they were born here, whether or not they speak their mind, or whether they look or act differently than those currently in power. We must begin every deliberation, every principle, and every discourse with the sacred proposition that every human being is no less deserving than any other. Within the span of just 1 year, we have seen a multiplication of efforts to divide, demean, and devalue certain sectors of the American population and to distance our country from many of its long-term allies and supporters. Such efforts have included restrictions on the rights of minorities and women to vote, the elimination of protections against discrimination for LGBTQ communities, the removal of funds used to promote health throughout our country and elsewhere, the privatization of lands that belong to Native Americans, and the abduction and relocation of students and others without due process, constitutionally guaranteed to everyone in this country, regardless of status. The list can go on and on. It's easy to ignore these things if they're not happening to you, when there is an endless parade of devastating and disastrous news assaulting any sense of decency. It's easy to just tune it out. When speaking out may spark difficult conversations and provoke backlash, it is easy to remain silent. But that is precisely what tyrants hope to achieve. By confusing society, bombarding it with sudden changes, and frightening people through continuous threats, authoritarians seek to wear down and suppress the population. They hope to force their country into submission because the real power of imperious regimes lies not in their actions, but in the acquiescence of their population. They rule because we allow them to rule. That sense of safety that tyrants hope to instill in their people is a lie. When people are snatched off the street in broad daylight, when people become ill because there are no available medicines or vaccines or people to deliver them, and when people are fired abruptly and haphazardly, those in power try to convince the populace that such things will never happen to them. However, the reality of a tyrannical regime is that if we allow it to happen to them, then it becomes possible to happen to us. In the name of that which you hold in your heart to be most sacred, may it be so.